Why Jawaharlal Nehru University is in news for all the wrong reasons?
What is the status of economic thinking and economic thoughts in India?
Do you think educational criteria should be there for the elected representatives?
So tell me something about the engagements of India with Africa.
May I come in?
Yes, come.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Please be seated.
Thank you, sir.
Please give a brief introduction about yourself.
So my name is Mahima Kasana, and I have done my schooling from Faridabad, Haryana. I've done my undergraduation in economics from Hindu College, University of Delhi, and my masters from Jawaharlal Nehru University, also in economics. And since then, I've been preparing for UPSC.
Okay, Mahima, tell me, they generally believe that economics is a very tough subject. How did you manage to develop interest in a subject like economics?
So this interest was always there since I was in school. So I was a commerce student in school, so this was the only subject that I was interested in. So I took forward this subject only.
Okay, you have studied in Delhi University, you said, and also in the Jawaharlal Nehru University. What cultural differences did you notice between the environment of JNU with that of Delhi University?
So there's a very major difference between the Delhi University and Jawaharlal Nehru University. That is something that I learned in JNU was a culture of inclusivity. Delhi University also has an atmosphere of inclusivity, but I think Jawaharlal Nehru University is something that accepts inclusivity with open arms. So the teachers are also very open to all the students from every background. So I started talking to more people from different backgrounds when I came to JNU. As compared to Hindu College in DU, I think it is still very restrictive in that sense. But it is open, but relative to JNU, I think.
You tell me why Jawaharlal Nehru University is in news for all the wrong reasons?
So I think the culture of protest in Jawaharlal Nehru University has been at the helm of criticism. So I believe that protest is a part of one's right to freedom in Article 19. So I think protesting by students is actually a healthy representation of Indian democracy, that the students are now realizing their rights and now practicing their rights through peaceful protests.
But don't you think that yes, is a fundamental right to expression, freedom to speak whatever you want to speak, but it should come with some riders or some embargoes. You can't be speaking anything and everything you feel like speaking in the name of freedom of speech. Don't you think that some restrictions need to be imposed?
Yes, sir, there are restrictions on the freedom of speech also. So there are restrictions on so that you cannot attack it.
So whatever is happening in the JNU, you are supportive of that.
So I think protesting is one's right, and right to protest cannot be taken away from the students. But I think it should be peaceful and it should not be violent, and there should be the constitutional backing to it.
You are from Delhi, so did you spend any time in the rural setup?
I'm from my home is in Faridabad, and
Faridabad is also a city only. Have you seen the rural life in India?
Sir, my grandfather comes from a rural background. So
what about you? Have you seen?
I have been to the village sometimes, so I do know the rural background.
Suppose if you get into the Indian Administrative Service, so your focus will be more on the villages or the cities?
So the urban and rural India should be looked at in an inclusive sense. So I think the focus should be on both the sides, not being skewed on just one side.
Got your point. How are you going to transform the village?
So from an economist perspective, I think the rural India is marred with poor infrastructure and poor credit. And also the women's situation in the rural area is also quite abysmal. So I think these are the areas that I will work in. And for infrastructure, I think the government has also provided a push in its budget for capital formation. And for the rural credit, I think there needs to be a greater push in the, for example, the scheduled commercial banks need to come forward and provide more priority sector lending to the agricultural areas.
Agriculture is an occupation, isn't it? Suppose if you want to transform it to a sort of business, so what is your prescription for that?
So agricultural startups are now coming up. So the government has also provided an accelerator fund for the agricultural startup. So for shifting it into a business, I think we can follow a Chinese economy type of pattern where they focus on the township and village enterprises. So first they develop the agricultural sector, and then they focused on using the agricultural sector's the low skilled work, for example the food processing and other businesses, so that they can invest in that sector and use the labor from agriculture to shift into this sector.
What do you mean by urban, rural, urban, urban?
Urban is the development of the rural and urban area together.
Thank you.
Mahima, you have cleared JRF also, Junior Research Fellow. Are you enrolled for MPhil or PhD anywhere? So what are your intentions?
My interests.
What are your intentions after clearing JRF? What you want to do?
JRF I cleared because this was the exam that everyone was giving. So, which is why I also give the exam to test my knowledge in economics. But research is something that I am interested in, and maybe in future I can work into research as well if I want to.
Okay. What is the status of economic thinking and economic thoughts in India? Generally speaking, and particularly for agricultural economy.
So the major economic focus of Indian economy, Indian perspective is also that the agriculture sector needs to be looked at through a sector that needs a revolution. So the agriculture sector itself is.
No, I'm more interested in the thinking point, thoughts.
The thoughts that Indian economy follows is the Keynesian model of economics. That is, we need to provide a push to the sector, for the agriculture sector, through, for example, that we have given the Manrega scheme. Which
Can you cite the names of Indian economic thinkers?
Sir, Amartya Sen is one Indian thinker. There are our professors like Professor Jayati Ghosh in JNU. There are also Professor Prabhat Patnaik. And John Dres also is working in India.
So what are the major contributions of Prabhat Patnaik in agricultural thinking?
Sir, these economists follow the Keynesian pattern of economics. So their focus is on providing government spending, government expenditure into the rural sector, so that they can increase demand in that area and further increase growth in the agriculture.
And what was Vakil and Brahmanand's thinking about agriculture?
So the VB model was a wage goods model. So it was different from the Mahalanobis model that India started following in the second plan.
So what are the details of that wage good model?
So the wage goods model was focused on providing consumer goods, and focusing on production of consumer goods, so that these are the goods that will investment in these goods will provide funding, provide wages to the labor, and these laborers will then increase demand in the economy. And
so which kind of consumer goods? Consumer goods are produced in agriculture as well as industry.
So these can be low hanging fruits like food processing, these kinds of goods.
So they advocated in the 1950s about food processing industries.
So I mean these kind of industries, for example.
So what has been the progress since independence? Have we really focused on development of agro-processing, agro-based and food processing industries?
So we have now shifted towards focusing on food processing industries. Initially, the agriculture sector itself was mired with certain problems, which is why agriculture sector could not drive demand.
When was the food park scheme launched?
Sir, I don't know the year.
Okay, what is price stabilization fund?
The price stabilization fund is the fund which is used by the government if the price of a particular product goes up.
Which products? Which are the notified crops under food?
Sir, I don't remember, but I think these are the horticultural.
Yeah, that's too good. That's correct. So which horticulture products is? There are two products mentioned by the government, notified by the government.
Sir, I don't know the. I think
these
tomatoes.
are onion and potato.
Okay.
So which are the central agencies which are engaged in procurement and open market sale of onion and potato under price stabilization fund scheme?
So the Food Corporation of India?
No.
The NAFED,
NAFED. What is NAFED?
National Agriculture Food Cooperative, sir. I'm forgetting the name.
The cooperation between India and USA is growing on economic domain. And today there is a meeting between the two leaders, Commerce Minister of India and the visiting Commerce Secretary of USA. Can you give the details of the agenda of their discussion today?
Sir, it is the semiconductor industry. There is an MOU being signed on semiconductor, I think.
Okay, and who is the visiting Undersecretary from the USA?
Sir, I don't know.
Okay, so what is the status of the Indo-US economic relation? What kind of, in which areas we are cooperating?
So the Indo-US economic relationship is majorly has driven recently because of the China factor. So the cooperations are also in, for example, there is an Indo-Pacific economic framework, there is a Quad framework, and so these are the framework that India is engaging with in United States.
What is the aggregate investment from USA in India?
Sir, I do not know the.
And what is Indian investment in USA?
I don't have.
What is the magnitude of trade between the two countries?
So United States is one of the top country that India exports to.
Generally, the magnitude is roughly in $1 billion.
Sir.
Around 100 billion, around 150 billion, around 200 billion. Any figure?
Sir, around 120 billion, I think.
Okay, it's a little higher, close to 160.
160.
Huge amount of rather sums are spent by Indian students in acquiring education in USA. So, do you think that this is undesirable import of US services?
So I think every student has the right to go and have
that's of course
better
right.
education.
But if let's say the family is having limited income, the children should aspire according to the budget.
Children should aspire according to their aspirations. So if they want to go and study outside, then India
so
should
you are
be
forgetting the basic teaching of economics, isn't it? Economics is a science of what? Meeting the needs.
So but education, I think economics also focuses on investing more in education and health sector, even if that means having a fiscal deficit in that.
Can we do something to save this unwanted expenditure on education import?
So the education sector in India itself has certain problems, which is why the students from India are going outside to have better education in the United States and Canada. So the education sector in India needs to be brought about to a level of the developed nations, which can help prevent this migration of students to the US. So in this sense, I think the focus should be on public sector education. The difference between the private and public sector in India in education sector has also created class inequalities. The private sector students get better opportunities, which is why they can go outside, but the public sector students do not have that level of opportunities for them.
In spite of this show off in private sector educational institution, whether these are private companies or government sector, all these institutions prefer to recruit students educated from government institutions.
So sir,
that means the private sector has failed to create impact of their quality.
So what I was referring was the school, primary and secondary education. But when it comes to the higher levels of education, I think the public sector is what every student wants to go to, not private sector in the first place. But here also the education sector in India is more focused on rote learning rather, and it is more technical in the sense that there is no
So we come back to the basic primary question. What is the status of thinking in India? Does the education system encourage thinking? And what is the status of thinking on economics domain?
So the education sector in India has developed to promote thinking, but I think still we are not up to that level of thinking, that students are not yet open to thinking because of the rote learning aspect.
My final thing, do you think that students, promising students like you, after clearing JRF, are not going into that area of thought and professional thinking and want to become administrators, which are basically rote job, repetitive mechanical job?
So there is a dynamic aspect to the civil services as well. So there are certain perks to that job as well. But I think research work, civil services and research work are not mutually exclusive. Research is something that one can.
Okay, Mahima, nice talking
Thank
to
you,
you.
sir.
Mahima, you come from Faridabad, right? Do you think educational criteria should be there for the elected representatives that will make our democracy better?
Yes, sir. I think there should be a minimum educational level for the elected representatives that will help, will enhance the level of our Indian democracy. But in the current aspect, I think first what we need to do is to develop education so that every person from the poor as well as the rich background has access to that quality education. Then we can say that everybody should have that level of
Okay,
education.
Haryana was one of the states which experimented with having this educational eligibility for the local body elections, right? So what happened to that experiment?
Sir, I don't know of the experiment.
You are not aware, right? Is there a educational criteria right now in Haryana for the local body elections?
Sir, I'm not sure of the exact
I'm
details.
not sure. Okay. You have economics as your subject, right? What are natural experiments in economics?
Sir, I have not read
You have not read. Who won the Nobel Prize in Economics
this year.
last year, 2022?
22. It was Ben Bernanke, the US Federal Reserve Chair, and Douglas Diamond, and there was a third other person by the name D-Big.
Okay, and they were given it for?
For bank crisis. They researched in the bank crisis, and for Ben Bernanke focused on bank runs being the major reason for bank crisis.
Okay. Recently a term has been in news, that is shrinkflation. What is shrinkflation?
So shrinkflation is inflation. Sir, I've not read shrinkflation.
And why bankers are not so keen on haircuts? What is the relation between bankers and haircuts?
The haircut is the amount that they have to bear when they let a non-performing asset go. So the bankers are obviously not keen on this because then they have to bear the cost of it.
Okay. Now you also like to follow news of national and international importance, right? So in recent times, three heads of state or heads of government have visited India, right? Can you name them and the country?
So the Italian
Prime Minister?
Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni.
Right.
Then, sir, all
The German Chancellor
Olaf Scholz,
and the Australian Prime Minister
Anthony Albanese.
Anthony Albanese, right? Now, can you tell me the name of the political parties to which these leaders belong? Okay, fine, leave it. Coming to the national politics, right? There have been state elections in 3 states. Can you name those 3 states in Northeast?
Tripura, Meghalaya, and
Nagaland.
Yes.
Now, why was the Nagaland election very significant this year, especially for women?
So the first woman MLA from Nagaland was elected this year.
Okay. And who is the Chief Minister of Nagaland?
So I can't recall the name right now.
Fine. My final question to you, Mahima, it is about the hijab controversy, right? So, if there's a choice between enforcing a dress code, right, that is a power given to the educational institution, and on the other side we have this access to education for the children, right? So, on which side do you lean and why?
Sir, I believe there should not be any dress code for education, because access to education should not be restricted to one wearing some religious attire or another.
But what is important, the religious aspect or like gaining education?
So the education is more important than the attire issue. So I think this should be left aside, and focus should be on providing education to the students, be it from any religion.
So you disagree with the Karnataka High Court verdict?
Sir, I think the education, the institutions also have a right to impose, to tell the students what they have to wear. Once you have signed that agreement and you have said, yes, that I will be wearing this uniform, then I think they have to wear it. That is also...
So I'm not getting it clearly, like on which
Sir,
side you
in
are.
terms of the court judgment, I think because they had the school have those rules, so I think they have to enforce those rules, and rules have to be followed. But
Don't you
but
think
I
even our
believe-
Indian constitution has made some exceptions? And if there are exceptions, for which community such exceptions have
for
been
the
made?
Sikh community, they have exceptions, so they can wear the turban and the kirpan. But sir, what I mean is that if the court judgment says that since they have signed that agreement, the students need to follow this. But in overall sense, I think uniform should not be a restrictive factor for one's education. So this is something that we should look. This issue has brought forward this the problem that uniform should not be focus of one's education. So thank you, sir.
Mahima, in the past couple of days, India and Australia both have cooperated in the field of education. Can you tell the exact initiatives they have taken?
So recently they have the Australian government has focused on opening the Deakin University, that is a public university in Australia, in the gift city in India. And the visas, the student visas also is one focus of both the sides, that India wants the Australian counterpart to have visas after the student are graduated from their work, so that they can have they can look for jobs in Australia. So extended visas, I mean.
Anything related to higher education?
I cannot think of.
Okay. See, the recent the Russian-Ukraine crisis, it has brought into focus the indigenization of India's defense sector. Okay, why?
The Russia-Ukraine crisis shows us that any economy with which we have a war can use its benefits, its exporting sector to its advantage. So that is being used in the Russian context, where the Nord Stream is being weaponized. So that has made India aware of the such circumstances with China and Pakistan. So India is now becoming more indigenized, in the sense that India wants to be prepared of any embargo which is imposed on it, if at all there is any war or any disagreement with any developed nations. So we are trying to develop our own defense equipments.
Okay. See, recently African Union summit was concluded. Okay. So tell me something about the engagements of India with Africa.
Africa and India have a historical link, going back to Mahatma Gandhi's visit to South Africa. So, but since then, India has not really engaged in the African area because of poor resources with India. So, which is why China has taken forward that role and started investing in Africa. So, in that way, India is still behind in engaging actively in Africa. But now India has started focusing on providing, going more in, for example, there is South Africa. We have a BRICS forum with South Africa. There is an IBSA also. But the focus is still limited to developed parts of the African nations, for example, South Africa.
Okay. See, Northeast India is very important for us for many reasons. Okay. What are the initiatives we have taken to develop that region, especially in context of our bilateral relationship with other neighboring countries?
So Northeast is important for India because it connects India with Myanmar and the East Asian economies, and with China as well, and Bangladesh and these nations. So, and this area has been very not developed compared to the rest of the India because of very limited connectivity. So in that way, development of Northeast will ensure that we have developed, we have better engagement with nations like Bangladesh and Myanmar and China as well. So in that way, India has, there are various schemes by the government. I can recall the PM Divine scheme for investing in the Northeast area. That is what I remember.
Thank you, Mahima.
Mahima, you have come from Faridabad, right? Why Faridabad is famous for?
So the automobile sector.
Okay. Have you ever visited the Surajkund fair?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me the brief history of this fair?
So the fair came up in late 90s. I don't remember the exact time, but it became internationalized in 2013. And the Surajkund Mela is an international Mela where people from different countries put their fairs and sell the goods that they are most specialized in. And also different states in India do the same.
Okay. You have done your graduation from very reputed institution, that is University of Delhi. Okay. So does this institution come under the category of Institute of Eminence?
Delhi University? Sir, I don't think that Delhi University comes under. The IITs and IIMs.
Okay. Have you heard this term Institute of Eminence? Can you tell me the criteria for that?
Sir, I don't know the exact criteria.
No issue. You have mentioned your hobby of reading novels, right? What is your favorite novel?
Sir, I have read Agatha Christie, so all her books are my favorite. The most favorite being Murder on the Orient Express.
Okay. What is the crux of that novel?
So the crux is that there are certain enemies of a person. Everybody gets into one train, and all the people in the train are trying to kill the person, and that is what the protagonist, the Hercule Poirot, tries to find out.
Okay, Mahima, I am giving you a situation. Your friend, the lady friend, is coming to you. Please listen this fact carefully. She got married 5 years back. Now she has a 4-year child. She is facing domestic violence, and the husband, the family, is forcing her for the separation. And she actually does not want for the separation, but actually continuously facing the violence. And if you are the SDM there, and if she is coming to you for any suggestion, then what is your suggestion?
Sir, I think domestic violence should not be accepted. Even if my friend does not want to get separated in that situation, I will still encourage her to get separated from the person, because domestic violence will go on, increase. The situation will go on aggravating, and then there are situations where we've seen that people ignore domestic violence, and then it leads to murders of the women as well in the households. There are dowry murders that we've seen. So I think I will not support her getting back to the relationship. I will help her, and she should go and talk to her family and friends. I think that is what I will suggest her, but definitely not getting back into that relationship.
Okay, thank you, Mahima.
Mahima, what are your views on marital rape?
Sir, marital rape is an exception in the IPC 375, section 375. So, sir, I think it should be removed.
Should be removed. Okay. What do you mean by urban local bodies?
So, urban local bodies are the bodies that are developed in the urban area for looking at the local issues in the cities.
Which municipality in the country you think is the best governed municipality?
Sir, I have not been to many cities, but comparing Faridabad with Delhi, I think the Delhi MCD fares better.
You are a student of economics. It is normally said that health of a municipal finances is critical element of municipal governance. So, in this context, what are the sources of revenue for any municipal corporation?
So, currently the sources of revenue for municipals are through the state governments. Mostly the states are providing them with
apart from what municipal bodies get from the central government and the state government.
So, they can raise their own taxes like property taxes. They have their own revenues, they can raise taxes.
What do you mean by non-tax revenue?
So, non-tax revenue are the fees and other charges that they impose on.
Give us 2 examples of non-tax revenue imposed by municipal bodies.
So,
okay, thank you. Thank you, Mahima. Your interview is over. You may go now.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
So, Mahima, this is going to be your first interview at the UPSC?
Yes, sir.
Which attempt is this?
Second attempt.
Second attempt. How have you done in the mains? Mains examination, how have you fared?
I believe
you are happy and satisfied?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's what is important. How about today's experience?
So I think compared to the last interview that I had given, I think I've done better, but definitely there needs.
No, you are a good candidate. You see, Mahima, you have studied in Hindu College, Delhi University, a very prestigious college in the Delhi University. University itself is prestigious, and Hindu College is a college of reckoning. Then you have studied in the JNU. So you will generate a lot of interest among board members, and they will. And then you have studied economics. So many issues are there. So looking at your background and all, lot of questions will be asked. What questions will be asked? No one can guarantee you. But then you see, you are a girl from Faridabad, so you have some time. Get an update on Faridabad. All about Faridabad and particularly Suraj Kund fair and all that. Then why shift from Faridabad? It used to be the main focus area for the development. Why it has gone to the Gurugram? What are the reasons for that? And how? That is one age. Second, you are a product of Hindu College. In that context only, the question was asked about the Institute of Excellence. Delhi University is one of the institutes of excellence. So what are the parameters for that? So this question was not out of the blue. It had a context. So try to understand that. Then you are a student of economics. I don't know what kind of questions will be asked. Very difficult to predict. Some basic fundamental theories of economics, how India is faring on various parameters in the economics. From there to the very mundane things like how budget is presented, what do you mean by deficit financing, whether estimations of expenditure and revenues are correctly assessed or not, what reforms do you suggest and all that. So such kind of questions also should be may be asked. So what we have found that you have adequate knowledge on issues, but you have to give a very cryptic answers to all those questions. Like for example, about contributions of Mr. Patnaik, P. Patnaik, you said Keynesian economy, and after that you stopped. So for a person like me who has not studied economics, it doesn't make any sense. So you have to elaborate for the information and for the benefit of others also. Similarly, I think there is you are from Hindu College, and recently the word Hindu rate of growth is in discussion. So Dr. Raghuram Rajan is again back in news. So maybe there is a remote possibility that this question may be asked. So be prepared for that. Then we asked you questions on Indo-US relationship, particularly with a special reference to trade and all that. So US is one of the biggest partners for us, for the country. So you have to have some idea of how much because you are a student of economics, what is the level at which trading is being done. So that figure you should be aware, and what are the major items we are importing, we have been importing, and of late what are the major items we have started exporting. And in that scenario only, how as a post-COVID India has become an important destination for investment. So which are the areas for investment, you should be fully aware. Which countries have evinced interest. Yesterday there was news about the Apple trying to make more investment and all that. That kind of stuff you should have a broad idea of all that. Then try to understand the intent of question. A question was asked on India-Africa relationship, that India's engagement in Africa. You should have said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Instead you brought in the element of China, which was not required, isn't it? So try to be very focused in your answers. Try to understand what is the intent of the question. Once you have understood, try to give a very focused response without bringing in any extraneous factor to that. So that is very important. Then similarly, India-Australia relationship, because you have yourself indicated that I have a special interest in all this. So that interest should get reflected in your talks also. So India, Australian, this thing, so many on the front of education and all that, so many schemes have been launched, Maitri and all that. Just go back and look at that. Then you will understand the details of this arrangement. Then the final thing is opinion based question whenever is asked, you have to be very clear about your opinion, and that opinion should not be without any basis. It has to have a very sound basis. Argument, 2 arguments you gave. For those 2 arguments, you have to have a very sound basis. First argument was, you feel that elected representatives should have some degree of education before they contest. That is what you feel. Now the counter question is, do you think in a country of like India, where the illiteracy rate is so high, do you think that educated people become, they make wonderful politicians and leaders? It will be very difficult for you to support your argument. So there you have to take a very balanced, that although education has its virtues, but there are examples where the people who have not been so well educated, still they have been great leaders and statesmen. So that kind of balance of judgment is very important. And like on the hijab issue also, you said that no, there should not be any restriction, isn't it? That's what the intent of your answer was there. So there also you have to have a very balanced opinion. If somebody goes in shorts, somebody goes in very casual dress, how it will look. So try to give a very balanced view, although I understand that freedom of choice should be there. But wherever in such educational institutions, if some rules and regulations are there, that should be honored. That is for the good of the students only. So there you can't be taking a very kind of a reformist approach. That is not important. And then you take a lot of pause also before one or two questions. If you don't know, just admit that I don't know. As simple as that. And so honesty is very important. When you go for the interview, make sure that you are very honest. Your personal integrity, because the selection of a bureaucrat, it's not a question answer session, isn't it? So whether the future bureaucrat in making has the quality of honesty or not, whether he or she is a level-headed person or not, so whether she or he is imaginative or not, cool, calm, composed, firm or not, only these are the elements which are seen. Based on these elements only you will be judged. And if you are able to take care of this part of it while giving answers, that if you don't know, don't know. Don't speak without knowing anything, isn't it? That is very important. So stay honest, be yourself, be confident, with a positive body language and a smile on your face. You look nervous also slightly, so bring some element of a smile on your face when you go for the interview. And you are a knowledgeable girl, you know so much, you have gone through this grueling process, but they are at the threshold of success. So take this opportunity to the fullest and do well. You will do well, no doubt about it. You have any specific question to ask?
No, sir. I think I wanted to ask if I looked nervous, which I did.
Yeah. And then what about your dress and all that?
I will be wearing a sari.
Okay, all the best. And don't worry, have confidence in yourself. That is what is important.
Thank
and
you.
No guesses.
Okay, sir.
All the best to you.
Thank
all
you.
the best. You may go now.
Thank you, sir.